All right. Excellent. So, welcome to the show. How do I want to start this week? First. Okay. There has not been any news or word of anything in terms of our missing little doggy. So he is still gone, missing. No word one way or the other as far as any of that goes. So we'll keep you informed if we hear anything. But otherwise, I'm sort of processing my emotions as though he's not coming back and trying to sort of deal with that new reality. Excuse me. It's been... Mel and I are very much grieving, very, very much. And I saw, on review last week after I told you guys what was going on, I could see I was not having a good day last week. So, just is what it is. Feeling, a little better a week later, but still, I'm really torn up about Benson and missing him. So anyway, so that's still kind of a thing in my life. Yeah. It's, I know some people have varying degrees of attitudes or ideas about missing pets or pets. And, some people think it's silly or you're a silly person for getting overly or emotionally involved with them or something. But I have the opposite view, so anyway, there's that. Okay. I wanted to share in our critical thinking. I don't know if you all saw, I posted a podcast yesterday with John A. Tack, where we got to talk more about his book, about the sort of common origin story of interestingly, the common origin story of Scientology and the Nazi Party and Aryan race theory. And it's a legit story. It sounds crazy, but so does Operation Paperclip, right? So does the Tuskegee experiments. I mean, things that sound crazy can still be true. Not everything you hear that is crazy is true by a long shot. There's a lot of people out there who like to push a lot of nonsense and call it truth. Xenu, there's nothing true about Xenu, but there is something true about, the series of events, the sequence of things that happen that has resulted in Hubbard and Scientology. And that series of events involves Madame Blavatsky, and it involves the OTO, it involves Aleister Crowley, and it involves the same place where Nazi Aryan race theory comes from. And it really shouldn't be that far of a stretch, really, if we're really being honest about trying to, things to believe in this world. The propagation of bizarre ideas and, frankly, absolutely ludicrous, nonsensical ideas is a common everyday occurrence. And just because people who, swim in circles of power have a lot of power doesn't make them immune to insanely silly goofball ideas. And a lot of those Aryan race theory ideas are prominent in our government right now. Stephen Miller is a white nationalist racist, and he's running, a good chunk of our government from his position. So these ideas get around, and it's not that hard to believe. The other thing that we talked about in the podcast, which I thought was of real value, not that it's not of value to understand the origin story of, the awful in our world, but what do we, but there's also another thing, which is, us. How do we fix this? How do we fix ourselves? How do we fix other people? How do you adjust somebody's head so that they're not so horrible, right? How do you do that? Well, critical thinking is part of that, and the REM model that I've put out is part of that, right? Is how to do that, is how to understand people in a simple, easy, very, very clear, very, very easy to understand way. And that's what that model is all about. So to help you today with the rational reason level of the REM model, let's talk about special pleading. This is the logical fallacy. Your fallacy is special pleading. Moving the goalposts to create exceptions when a claim is shown to be false. And this is pretty much exactly where the Trump administration lives, is here, right here, special pleading. Edward Johns claimed to be psychic, but when his abilities were tested under proper scientific conditions, they magically disappeared. We've seen this over and over and over again with psychics, haven't we? Edward explained this, saying that one had to have faith in his abilities for them to work. Well, if you don't have faith, it's not going to work, is it? Right? Which, of course, challenges our very concepts of truth, objectivity, and work. What does it mean to work? Well, if your psychic powers only work when people believe they work, then that means you're invisible only when people aren't looking at you. You know, I mean, it's like, what are you talking about? You know? Yes, I have the power of invisibility. Oh, really? Show me. Well, you got to turn around. You know? It's like, okay, sure, buddy, you got it. So, you know, we could do better. We can be better at this. We can be a lot better at this. And that's where my take on things comes from, in case anybody's wondering where I'm coming from these days or what I'm trying to be about. It's about that. So we got some questions coming in. You guys are awesome. And I hope that you will really throw anything at me this week. I am down for it. I'm not in a particularly bad, you know, mood today. I'm in a pretty good mood. And, the book is coming along. I have been activated on writing powers, by the way. So it's like, thank God, the operational button. Somebody upstairs likes me right now, because I'm able to actually sit down and pump out just, you know, pages and pages of verbiage at a time right now and my writing, and it's going great. You know, this came out 10 years ago, and I have completely, you know, sort of spilling the beans here and really over promising right now. But I am shooting for, I figure, you know, when the iron's hot, man, fucking strike, right? So I'm going to go for finishing this book on cult recovery in the next month or so, and try to get it out for a Christmas release, so that, like, this was posted around Christmas time 10 years ago. I want to get my new book out for y'all for Christmas. So I don't think I'm going to be able to get the audiobook recording done by then. That would be pretty amazing. But I do want to finish the book and get it typeset, get it edited. The editing process is actually the part that's probably going to add the most amount of time right now between where I'm at and hitting the publish button and getting the book to you. Is I'm going to need, you know, a couple people to review the manuscript and give me some feedback. And of course, I've got a couple people who are willing to do that, but it's always, you know, you're asking somebody else to do things for you, and so you have to kind of work on their schedule. And so so I'm hoping that will come together well and timely, in a timely way for y'all. Okay, so let's get to your questions. I have a preset question. Let's go ahead and get to that one first. This should be our questions page here. And this came in the email line from Michael Yoder. If you want to email me a question during the week, feel free to. You can email me. The address is askchrisshelton@gmail.com. And if you send me an email there, it'll, you know, if you send me a question on that, then I will throw it in my question queue and answer it in the next week or two on the show here. All right, so here's Michael's question. A couple of weeks ago, you talked about staring at people and unlearning that from your indoctrination. Yeah, this is in reference to the TRs and Scientology's methods of teaching communication and stuff like that. As much as some TRs include prolonged eye contact, many cultures, Japan, China, India, indigenous peoples, and many others, find that kind of eye contact to be aggressive or disrespectful. Does the Church of Scientology take these cultural differences into consideration and rework their TRs to fit the cultural norms? How would they handle that? This is a great question, because it allows me to just blatantly, you know, straight off say, no, they don't. Scientology does not ever expect or change itself for local customs when it comes to the practice or the rituals of Scientology. I love using words like that because Scientologists don't use words like that. And they really, and it's a way of sort of throwing a curve into, you know, how people think about Scientology. It is if they're going to call themselves a religion or a religious philosophy, then that means that the practices they're engaged in are not scientific practices. They are faith-based rituals. And that is what auditing basically is. And so, as well as the Sunday services and the group processing and the word clearing, and all of these are ritualistic activities. They are well-described, guided activities that you're expected to do by complying with the series of steps that L. Ron Hubbard wrote to do them. You don't get to modify, change, update them, revise them according to your local customs. If you're offended by something that's happening in an auditing session or in a training session in a Scientology classroom, too bad. Nobody cares about how offended you are about what's going on around you. In the Church of Scientology, like any cult, it's a compliance culture. You're expected to show up and you're the one who changes, not the technology or the rituals of Scientology. They stay the same. They are timeless. And Hubbard was crystal clear in keeping Scientology working that these are to remain, you know, static and perfect in their most perfect form that they are in, and no one is ever authorized to introduce any change or modification or think that they know better than L. Ron Hubbard when he put these things together. That's the attitude within Scientology is no, you comply with the ritual. The ritual doesn't comply with you. And this would be actually sort of structurally one of the things that would alert you right away as to whether, you know, as to what kind of an environment you're in. It's not necessarily an automatic red flag that the environment isn't tuning itself or customizing itself to your needs, but it is an indication of, you know, the kind of environment you're in. You know, we might think of this as a friendly versus unfriendly environment, or, you know, a pliable versus an unpliable environment. And to the degree that you find yourself in a rigid, unpliable environment, you know, you are losing control of the situation. And that's what makes people feel a little uncomfortable about the whole thing, right? Is, well, wait a minute, I thought, don't my opinions matter? No, not here, they don't. Nope, we don't care. And so, you know, in terms of Scientology and cultural differences, yeah, they don't care. They might, see, Scientology will pay lip service to cultures in terms of dress, manner of speaking, you know, language, inflections, or idioms, or, you know, local customs that don't impact on Scientology rituals are fine. You know, you want to show up in a culturally appropriate wear and do culturally appropriate things, and I don't know, you know, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what kind of things that might entail, right? But when it comes to Scientology itself, no, there's no changes. Okay, so there you go. Let's go back to this host and chat screen here. And let's carry on. Thank you, Katie, for your wonderful feedback there. Yeah, I agree, Robert. Psychics are just kind of the worst, aren't they? All right, let's get on with y'all's questions now. Start throwing them up on the screen. Make sure this is working here. There it is. All right, George Smiley. I love your questions, George. You ask the best questions. Outer space seems, in Hubbard's telling, to be a far more cruel and barbaric than Earth, which is supposed to be a prison. Does Hubbard ever address this contradiction? Oh, that's interesting. No. Hubbard talks about the world at large, the whole track, the universe at large as brutal, brutal places. Hubbard makes it very clear that his idea about the universe at large is that it is a might is right, exert your will, shall be the whole of the law, right? Accomplishing your intention or your will. And that the universe is basically a game of competing intentions and forces that are trying to manifest their own personal, sense of destiny or purpose or meaning over others. And whether you have this invader force fighting that invader force, or this galactic civilization engaged in some timetable of conquest where they're taking over the entire universe or something, and these various competing forces is kind of the not even a balance of power. Hubbard never really gets into describing the dynamics or politics of the universe in enough detail to give you any kind of real concrete sense of who these players are and what they're all about. He just drops little anecdotes here and there, little, very, what's the word? Intriguing or tantalizing little tidbits of stuff. He really never pontificated for any real length of time in any lecture or writing as to who these people are and what they were about out there in the big wide universe. So you get these cruel, barbaric, as you say, sort of anecdotes about life out there and how it's impacted life here, and how this is this dumping Earth, Tigiak, is this dumping ground prison planet, and this is just where people end up as sort of this lonely island in the universe where people are just sort of dumped. And Hubbard talks about how here on Earth there are criminals, misfits, people who just don't fit in, sort of the neurodivergent of the universe, if you will, and the criminals of the universe, right? Like Hubbard explains that Earth is in the condition that it's in because this has been a prison where all of the criminals of the universe are just dumped. And over time, over the millennia, as they go through a life and another life and another life, they just keep dramatizing their evil intentions and criminal intentions and making a hash out of things and making things awful for everybody else. And these are the predators we're all dealing with all the time. This is Hubbard's sort of explanation for why this society on Earth is so screwed up. It's just because the people who make up our societies are the people who just don't get along with the rest of the populations out there. They're nonconformists. They don't comply, which I find absolutely ironic given the fact that Hubbard created a compliance culture cult that demands 100% conformity with everything L. Ron Hubbard says. And then he has the gall to position all of these complying robots that he's creating, Scientologists, of which I was one, and he dares to say to them, oh, you guys are the most independent personalities in the universe. You're the misfits, the guys who won't go along with everybody else because you're such independent thinkers. Right? I mean, this is just this whole sort of double play hypocrisy that is, so rife in Scientology in the exact same way it's so rife through Christian nationalist circles here in the United States these days. They're just the most rank hypocrisy laden group of people you could ever have anything to do with. You just can't believe the things that come out of their mouths, right? And this is the level of what goes on in Scientology, this level of hypocrisy. So but the funny thing, just to mention that, just to wrap this up, is, does Hubbard ever address this contradiction? No, he doesn't. He just basically says the universe is a really brutal place. And I guess he puts it out there that way. The impression it created in me, so this is why I think this, right, is that, sort of a thank God you're part of this group. Thank God you're part of Scientology, right? Because if you weren't, you would be adrift, you'd be cast adrift, unsupported, unloved, unadmired in a universe that is uncaring, unthinking, and brutal. And there is a lot of truth in that statement, right? Of it's a pretty uncaring, brutal universe, right? Justice doesn't exist in an objective sense. It's a human construct, right? Purpose, meaning, these are emotional needs that we have. They're not real things, right? Your purpose and meaning in your life is whatever you dream up it is, or what you accept other people telling you it is. The universe doesn't provide it to you, right? There is no universal, here's the meaning for your life. You got to dream it up yourself because it's your thing. The universe isn't here to cater to you. It doesn't organize itself around you, and it's not a living thing that's aware of your existence in any meaningful sense. I like to think of the universe as a sort of great big living organism in a way. Actually, I kind of think of it that way, but that's just a way of organizing thinking about the universe. It doesn't make it that way, right? And so I guess what I'm saying all of that is because however many templates or ideas we try to lay over the universe, the universe is like a honey badger, it doesn't give a shit what we think, right? So Hubbard doesn't really offer a lot of what's the word? Succor, yeah, sympathy, right? a lot of support, right? It's like, nah, this is just kind of how it is. Yeah, I don't know. That's what I can. Those are my rambling thoughts today about that, George. But thanks for asking. All right, X-Sign, let's move on. What did you think of the No King's Day event yesterday? I loved it. I was so excited. Mel and I went. You saw the photos if you're paying attention to my channel. You might have seen I posted photos from it yesterday. Oh, BG Foster, I'm just seeing your comment here. I'm so sorry. Sorry, I got a little distracted here by some of the comments there. I am... Oh, sorry about that. Okay. No King's Day. Let's go back to that. Okay. Mel and I, of course, were out there working, with other people, protesting the No King's Day. If you're watching this right now and you're one of those folks who is all like, up Trump's butt and you think Trump is amazing and what are we talking about? I'm out of words now, right? For who you are. I don't know or understand that. People who support this administration and anything having to do with it are basically putting themselves in the same headspace as white nationalists, white supremacists, Christian nationalists. The very worst of what America has to offer is what this administration has to offer America, right? Is the very worst of us. The white supremacists, the anti-immigrants, the haters, the people who are absolutely positive that it's their way or the highway. And their way is so horrible. It's so exclusionary and violent and awful for anybody who isn't them, that I don't want to have anything to do with it. I don't want to support it, and I can't go anywhere near people who at this point now that we're in, as of, October 19th, 2025, if you haven't gotten a clue yet as to what Donald Trump and this administration are about, then I just don't think you're going to get it. And I'm out of time and energy to try to explain it to you. I've spent now 9 years breaking down Donald Trump's cultic bullshit. And so I'm not here to convince anymore when it comes to politics and it comes to, the Trumpian stuff. If you can't hear the words that I have been saying on this channel for years about the danger of what this administration poses to freedom and liberty and our way of life. If you can't see that at this point, you're blind. You're just absolutely so in the cult that I don't even know what you're doing here watching me on this channel because you ain't getting anything I'm saying, right? It's that I don't have any better words anymore for how to talk to people in the audience who don't think like I do, right? It's just like, okay, well, you don't have to think like I do, but you could open your eyes and look around, right? We are in the middle of a slow roll, and that's actually not even very slow, towards total fascism and authoritarianism in this country, toward anybody who isn't white, Christian, nationalist. If you're not a white Christian nationalist, this administration despises you and wants you locked up, kicked out of the country, or preferably dead. It's that crystal clear what this administration is about. And that's why I go out to protest it. And if none of that makes any sense to you, then you're either living in a basement or you're a Nazi. I don't know how else to put it to people. You're either completely blind and deaf to everything going on around you, or you like it, which means you're a Nazi. Because the only kind of people who really like watching people be persecuted, violently thrown down, assaulted in the streets, American citizens, not illegal immigrants, American citizens are being treated this way by this government every day of the week, all around you. And if you think this is normal and this is the way things should be, you have no business watching me or this channel, because you ain't hearing anything I'm saying, right? That is the extremity of violent cultic thinking, and I can't put up with it, and I'm not going to. So I'm going to continue to show up and protest. That's the least I could do. Showing up and protesting is the least we can do. If you think of going out and protesting as an extraordinary act, it's not at all, right? This is something we're going to have to, I'm going to be doing a lot more of this. I'm just, today you can kind of tell where I'm at as far as all that stuff goes. I just don't have the patience for it, right? I understand why people get to that headspace, but it doesn't make it any less awful, any less violent, or any less un-American to be in that Trump headspace, right? To be in the white Christian nationalist headspace is to be an enemy to everything America stands for. And tell yourself you're being a patriotic American, but you're not. You're being a complete asshat. And anybody who falls into that camp with the red hats and all of that at this point is my enemy. They are an enemy of America. And I have to now be that blunt about it, because there's a point where you go from an intellectual discussion or debate, or, yeah, let's talk about the marketplace of ideas and let's share ideas. You can go from that. But when people are being handcuffed and thrown in vans by unmarked vans by unidentified government agents who are masked, when that's the order of activity that's happening daily in your country, you don't get to call yourself a free society or an open thinking free market of ideas. That's not where we're at now. We're in tyranny, and this government is an authoritarian dictatorship. And Stephen Miller and Vaught and these other guys are evil men. And they simply must be put down at this point. So, and I don't mean violently killed. I mean taken out of power and put in fucking jail where they belong for the crimes they're committing of murder. They're murdering people, right? They're flat out killing people. They're straight up incarcerating people who are political enemies. And Donald Trump is a 3-year-old who doesn't even understand what the hell is actually going on around him. He's just being used at this point. So the whole thing is just such a sickness that our country is suffering from, that this entire planet is suffering from, because of the billionaire rich and the elite, the power elite who have taken advantage of us for so long, that I just kind of, it's more of a war footing for me at this point, right? It's not like we can just debate this out and we'll just figure it out between us. Not now. We're at war, and the Trump administration is the enemy. So that's how I sort of think about the world now, and how I think about my involvement in fighting back against our fascist Christian nationalist government, right? As represented by the Trump movement and MAGA. It's a hate group of racists and sexists and the very worst that America has to offer. That's MAGA. And that's what I fight and protest against. And that's as blunt a way as I know how to say all of that. So I know that I lose people saying stuff like that. You know, my integrity is more important than my viewership. So I don't know what else to tell you guys about that. I appreciate the fact that y'all are still watching. George Smiley. Now the golden age of admin is done. What do you think will be the next part of Scientology that Miscavige will tinker with? Great question. I wonder about this a lot, actually. I'm really glad you guys and me are on the same page on a lot of this stuff, because I know I say a lot of these conditional if you then sort of thing in terms of talking to some of you guys, but I know a lot of you guys are on the same page I'm on, and I really appreciate it, as it feels good to not be alone in this. Okay. So golden age admin is done. There's a lot that Miscavige has to go back over. If he were serious about implementing Hubbard's superpower strategy, you know, okay, L. Ron Hubbard created the Key to Life course, the Life Orientation course, and Superpower. These services were based on an evaluation of the entire planet that L. Ron Hubbard did back in the 78, 79 time period. I guess after the FBI raid and stuff, Hubbard decided he needed to, you know, figure out what was going on in the planet, according to him. And he kept running into people, staff members, Sea Org members, who were making errors and problems and creating issues. And this is when he, you know, said no more LSD and no more sex. And, you know, we got to get all these distractions off the lines, and we got to get people working, right? And then he's like, you people can't read, and you can't do TRs, and you can't do this, and you can't do that. And he was really down on his staff for not being able to keep up with his demands. And so he created this eval, and he created these services and this idea that he would fix up the staff of Scientology and make them into superpowered, supercharged staff members who would go about clearing the planet. This was the strategy to clear the planet. This is how Hubbard said it was going to be accomplished, is through these services being given to the staff, and the staff would become, you know, amazing. So that was called the World Out of Comm eval. The world is out of communication, Hubbard said. And so these services will get the world back into communication with itself by teaching people to read and grammar, and literally going back to the basic nuts and bolts of, you know, reading, writing, arithmetic, and TRs, and getting people, you know, head on straight and all that. And then Superpower was supposed to be this series of services to clear up their perceptions and their past charge and upsets in regards to the subject of ethics and justice. That's part of Superpower, is cleaning that up. The perceptic stuff, of course, which we all know about in Superpower, and all the rest of it, right? All the actions that comprise that rundown was supposed to be the handling to get staff to be able to competently do their jobs. Okay, so if Miscavige, from his position, wanted to debug Scientology, he'd pick up those evals. He'd pick up that eval, right? He'd probably pick up that handling. And so Superpower is out now. All the staff in the world could be theoretically cycled through Flag to do it there, if they can't do it in their local org because of all the, you know, perception do-ha-has, if for no other reason. He could arrange that. He could. Yeah, Golden Age of Ethics. Cyan puts in the comments, Golden Age of Ethics. That was attempted. Marty Rathbun was kind of given that job a little bit back in when he was still around. And that kind of went tits up. The whole Golden Age of Ethics thing didn't really go anywhere. But that is a reason why Miscavige could circle back around to that. And he could put out another, he could do round number 4 of the PTSSP course and the ethics specialist course. And let's get all the Scientologists trained up on ethics, because it's ethics. Ethics are out, and we're going to get ethics in because the tech won't go in. Let's see, yeah, he could easily, David Miscavige could very easily justify a whole Golden Age of Ethics thing. Right, because he puts out the Golden Age of Tech, and he puts out the Golden Age of Admin, and then it's not going to go anywhere. None of this is going to go anywhere, right? We already know that. So he could then go to ethics too. Absolutely, X-Sign, you're absolutely right. He could circle back to ethics, because in Scientology, L. Ron Hubbard says, there's a whole lecture on this, where Hubbard says if you can't get the admin, the organization, to get its head on straight and operate smoothly, then the reason why you can't do that is because the tech is not being applied standardly. People aren't doing auditing right, or people aren't doing the course room stuff right. Somehow this is supposed to make sense, right? So the tech is out, and you got to go deal with the tech, and then that will somehow allow you to get the admin in. But if the tech won't go in, if you're trying to put the tech in, and you're working with people and you're correcting people and they just won't do it right, and they won't do it right, and they won't do it right, then ethics is out. And this is exactly where, this would fit in with how David Miscavige thinks about things is, of course, well, I gave them the Golden Age of Admin and they fucked it all up. And I gave them the Golden Age of Tech and look what they did with it. So clearly I'm just dealing with about out ethics people. I mean, that's kind of how the whole and the entire operation that David Miscavige engages in to punish people. I mean, this is all from this place of ethics, right? This is obsession that he has with people's, ethics. So he could easily take all of Scientology down that ethics rabbit hole that he's been, sort of bludgeoning the Sea Org with for the last 20 years, right? He could definitely do that. 30 years, I should say. Let's see. Other things he could pull out. There's a lot. He's done the Golden Age of Admin now. So, of course, the most obvious target, the most obvious thing that he should be concentrating on right now is the St. Hill Special Briefing Course. The Class 6, the sort of golden egg of Scientology as far as L. Ron Hubbard was concerned. The St. Hill Special Briefing Course is a course that L. Ron Hubbard ran personally at St. Hill from 1960 to 1966. And it consists of about 420 something lectures, all the bulletins, all the books, all the e-meter stuff, all the references, everything is in there. It's supposed to be a full chronological study of all of Dianetics and Scientology. And the only reason that it was incomplete all the years that it was out is because Miscavige and Hubbard didn't go about releasing all of Hubbard's lectures and written works, because they were just, dragging their ass and getting it all out. But now Miscavige has put out all this stuff, done all this review, gone through all these materials, gone through all these lectures. I mean, how much more is there to release, dude, right? Like, let's get it out. And then he could plausibly say the St. Hill Special Briefing Course is now complete. It couldn't be complete in Hubbard's lifetime because of all this backlog of all this stuff to release. But now we've finally gone through it all, and it's all out there. And here is your brand new full chronological study of all of Dianetics and Scientology from beginning to end. All the non-confidential stuff, because they don't have the confidential stuff on the briefing course, but everything else is basically supposed to be in there. Now, obviously, this is not going to include a full chronology of all of Hubbard's organizational policies, or, you know, the specialist stuff that he wrote for the cameramen or the makeup artists or something at Gold. I mean, there's all kinds of specialist stuff in Scientology that applies to very niche areas. But the briefing course is supposed to be the technical tour de force of Scientology. It's supposed to be the big, you do this class, if you're a class 6 St. Hill grad, you are a master Scientologist. You are somebody who has mastered it. And the only place to go after that as a public Scientologist is class 8, where you kind of refine everything into sheer perfection, and you are a perfect technician of Scientology, right? That's your class 8. So if Miscavige wanted to, he could, you know, milk this stuff. He could go on a whole roll on the tech and on the St. Hill Special Briefing Course and go to town on that. I don't know that that aligns with his plans, though, in terms of how he's molded Scientology, because lacking all of this stuff, let's talk about this for just a second, and then we can move on. But this is interesting because you would think, us old-time Scientologists would think this would be front and center for Miscavige. This would be like the top priority. This briefing course has not been online or serviceable or usable. It hasn't been being delivered, in other words, for like 20 years. They haven't had any briefing course going on because Miscavige derailed it. He literally sabotaged his own service, right? His own delivery. And the St. Hill Special Briefing Course was a mainstay service. It wasn't something a few people were doing. There were people full-time, 20, you know, at ASHO, at UK, at Clearwater, doing this briefing course. It was a big deal. And it was a real moneymaker for them. So sabotaging the delivery of that was not a small thing in Scientology, and Miscavige really cut off making these master level Scientologists, right? So they don't really exist anymore, which is kind of interesting. It says a lot. And it's one of the main reasons why Hubbard would chop Miscavige's head off the second he came back, if Hubbard really did come back, right? He would murder David Miscavige for what he did to the briefing course alone. Make no doubt about it. I'm not even kidding. Miscavige would be dead. Hubbard would literally kill him for what he has done to Scientology, right? Just for the briefing course alone. It's that important. It's that big of a deal, right? To Hubbard, it would have been. So Miscavige is already like, you know, whatever as far as Hubbard's take on things goes. Okay, so yeah, so that would be a thing. But where I wanted to go with that was that because Miscavige has turned Scientology into such a boutique catering to the VIP rich of Scientology, I don't think very many of them have much of an interest in doing the briefing course, which is probably why he's gotten away with it. Right? I don't think Tom Cummins or Tom Cruise are hot to trot on doing the briefing course. So they're probably not giving Miscavige a lot of shit for sabotaging this delivery. And so they don't really think about it much, right? So whereas old school Scientology would have been a lot more, you know, briefing course, I don't know that current Scientology is really pushing that hard to get it back. I mean, it has been gone for 20 years. So I don't think most Scientologists even understand at this point what it is that they're missing out on, you know, as far as that goes. Would the advanced people be a threat to DM? The reason why technically trained people, higher trained people in Scientology are a threat to David Miscavige is because they are the ones who will most easily and clearly see how off the rails David Miscavige actually is and how far off the rails he's taken Scientology. The more tech you know in Scientology, the more you see it's not being done the way Hubbard says it's supposed to be done, and the more questions that will be raised because of that. So to that degree, yeah, absolutely. Because, you know, how do I sit here and say the things I say about Miscavige and Hubbard? Because I'm tech trained. I am very tech trained, and I read a lot of technical information in Scientology. And that's really where you get closest to Hubbard and what he wanted. And he reiterated his wants and desires for Scientology and his plans for it over and over and over again in his lectures. And so you get this sense of how Scientology is supposed to operate. And then you see what Miscavige is doing with it, and you go, well, you know, these two things don't go together at all. That's, you know, the threat that it poses to Miscavige. Yeah. Okay. Good. Let's carry on here. I think I've given that question enough time. It's a good question. Thanks for asking, George. And if there's anything else that I didn't think of, because I'm sure there are other, boy, what else? I mean, yeah, he could go back around to Keto Life LLC and the World Out of Calm Eval. He could go back to the briefing course. I understand also right now that there are, I should include this in the answer, that there are also a bunch of children's courses and services being piloted right now. So there may be a big effort on Scientology's part. I mean, there's no question that it will be, that there will be an effort on Scientology's part to deal with children, kids, getting them made into Scientologists faster and easier, right? Because they're going to run into a lot of Scientology parents who are going to be very frustrated about their kids not becoming Scientologists, and they don't know how to make them Scientologists. And so Miscavige is going to try to come up with services to fix that problem, and we'll see what he does with that. Apparently that's being worked on right now, so we'll see how much longer that goes. Okay. Xen asks, I loved your podcast with John Atack you posted yesterday. Thank you. I did too. I really liked that talk with John. I understand that Jews and people of color have been persecuted, but I just don't understand why, and continues for so long. Oh, okay, sure. Tribalism. There's a lot of different ways I'm thinking about approaching this answer right now. Sorry, I'm just thinking. It has never been a part of our biology or our species social intentions or sort of social norms that we all get along as a species, right? There's no compulsion within us that we all get along. We have a limit. We have a line or a point where we're okay with not getting along with other people, right? Life, okay. We can't all just do that. There's this thing that's built into us that we are in a constant sort of adjusting. We're not in survival is not a place where you get to and then it's just a smooth ride, right? It's a constant struggle. It's a constant fight and look and threat assessment and constantly watching the environment for, you know, who or what is coming after you or what's going to try to kill you or what's going to try to take your resources. If it's not direct physical threat to you, it's a threat to your resources. And for us now, that's money and, you know, work and, you know, where we put our energy in order to get our energy back, right? Anything that does that is resource management. And so we're constantly engaging in this, and we operate on the assumption and principle as life units that that we're constantly struggling to meet those needs. And even after they're met, they have to stay met, and keeping that at a place where we feel comfortable all the time with our needs being met, that's a difficult place for human beings or for life in general to be at, because the universe and the forces in our life, even outside, the ones outside ourselves, if not within ourselves, are constantly changing. We're constantly the effect of random things happening to us from the environment that threaten our resources, right? And I know, like, okay, great, Chris, what else is new? I say this stuff because this is the stuff that drives us, right? This is what drives our thinking and drives our behavior and drives us in groups, is resource management and allocation and trying to achieve, like John and I talked about, this concept of homeostasis, right? This idea where there's this balance of forces and everything in our life is just perfect. But then somebody else comes along, or we think somebody else comes along and screws with our homeostasis. Everything's great, and then you fucking people moved in, right? It's this attitude, right? It's like everything was fine until you guys came along, and now I have a reason, because I'm going along, everything's fine, or we're going along, our group, our tribe, our little village, everything's fine. Then you people showed up, and now we have to share our resources. We have to extend a helping hand. We have to see, we have to extend trust. Are you going to extend trust back to us? Or are you here to screw us over? We don't know you. So I don't know whether I can trust you or not. Like you see, like strangers come along into these situations where you achieve some degree as a group or as an individual, you achieve some level of like, okay, everything's kind of cool now. And then some folks come along and it's like this is the whole anti-immigrant thing, right? In a nutshell. And it has to do with threats to my homeostasis, my survival, right? My emotional needs versus yours. And here we go. I don't know. I know I'm being super, super basic and going down to like these really simple, basic concepts, but this is where it comes from. These needs, these drives. This is why it continues, why it starts and why it continues, right? Is because people feel threatened, whether they're right or wrong about their feelings, they feel that way, and then they get exclusionary. Well, there's not enough resources here for you and me, so guess who's going to get them? I'm going to, right? And immediately we jump right back into might is right, and I'm going to take these resources from you if you won't give them up. And if you have to die and so that I live, that's a computation that at the end of the day, an awful lot of life forms manifest or live by, right? Sharks don't think too much about, other sharks when there's food there, right? When they're having a feeding frenzy, for example, right? This kind of thing. And these basic needs underlie emotional needs. If I was going to add to the REM model, right, there is another level that, that I don't talk about much with the REM model, because I don't want to make it overly complicated or confuse people. But there is another thing below emotional needs, and that's basic needs, which is basic physical needs, right? Hungry, sleep, stuff like that. That's even more basic than emotional stuff. If you don't have your physical needs being met, right, you'll go crazy. You'll absolutely go psychotic. We can prove that with any person, anytime, anywhere. You just deprive somebody of sleep or food long enough and you'll make them crazy. So it's really, and it doesn't take that long either. We're talking about days, a couple weeks, and you got a madman on your hands. So this is, again, real basic stuff to what drives us. My point is, what drives us? Needs. And when those needs aren't being met or are being threatened, this is where we get the divisions. And this is why we get the hate. And this is where we get, all the hate is the justification, the rationalization of there aren't enough resources and there's too many of us. And so I got to figure out why I should get these resources and you shouldn't. Well, you're a bad person and I'm a good person. And that makes it so that I should have the resources and you shouldn't. You deserve to die because you're a bad person. That entire thought process is the thought process of prejudice and hate. Right? To the degree that there's thinking going on at all, it's hardcore survival-based, resource management-based, stuff. And even if it's not true, see, here's the horrible part about human beings with this, is that even when it's not true that our resources are being threatened, and it's not true that we're actually at risk of dying, we will imagine that we are. We can imagine it. We can propagandize ourselves into believing this. We can be radicalized into believing that this is happening, like Britain with Brexit, was like all the Brits were convinced, right? All these evil immigrants, you know, are the heart and soul of why Britain is dying, right? And so we have to get rid of these people. This whole exclusionary, pull in the flippers, you know, kind of thinking, it comes out of this raw, basic needs kind of thinking, right? When John mentioned the other day about in the podcast about disgust, and I jumped on that because it was such a great example of how the brain turns a physical manifestation of actual revulsion to poison or bad food being given to it. The brain's developed response to that is disgust, right? Out of the body. We must get this poison out of the body, right? That disgust mechanism is a physical mechanism to keep your body surviving by rejecting poison. That same response mechanism is the same mechanism that goes into play when you feel disgust at an intellectual, rational level. You get that same feeling of you just want to throw up, right? And when propagandists can connect the concept of immigrants to the concept of disgust like that, right? You get so much further and easier, you know, to drive those people to hate and violence, right? When you can connect those kind of concepts. America first, exactly. This is stuff that is as old as the hills, and it keeps coming back around because it works, and it works because it is playing us on our emotional and our even more basic physical needs. That's why it continues. And it takes a great, like critical thinking, it takes a great manifestation of will and intellect to overcome those base needs and perception of needs. Because really, this so in our modern world, let me just harp on that last little bit, just a little bit, and I'll move on. But in our modern world, that is a key part of this picture, is the perception of our needs is how we manifest our needs, but it's not necessarily the reality. You can have a full stomach, be in a wonderful house in the middle of middle class tract housing, have a wonderful job, have a wonderful family, and feel, as you sit comfortably in your living room watching the nightly news, that you are under threat and attack by hostile forces who you imagine are literally surrounding your house right now. You can enter into a delusional state like that through propaganda and be in a place where your resource management and your time and energy management is actually great, and you and your family are surviving wonderfully compared to the survival level of everybody else on the planet, but you can feel as though you are, you know, on the brink of extinction. That's where all the Christian nationalists in this country under Trump are at right now. Most of them are getting along just fine, but they feel, they know that, right? They have that moral certainty that they are under attack and they are 1 inch away from complete extinction. And you can get a whole group of people thinking that way, which has nothing to do with reality. But they are convinced that it's true, that they are under attack, that they are under persecution, that they are under threat, that they are 1 inch away from extinction. And therefore, they have to organize and fight and do everything possible to get rid of anybody who isn't them, because if they don't, they're going to sink and die, right? And none of that is true. Not any part of that is true if we talk, say, about Christian nationalists. But they're convinced. And so you get this nonsensical attitude of we must destroy everybody who's trying to destroy us before they get us first, right? And then you add, with the real horror of the Christian nationalists is, then you add on top of that this whole belief set that to destroy everybody else but us is actually what God wants from us. It's a righteous cause. We are being good people in the eyes of our supernatural creator if we literally destroy everybody who isn't us. And that's the exact place where religion loses the plot entirely and becomes a manifestation of the worst of us rather than the best of us, right? Is that exact moment. So that's how it happens. And that's how it's happening here in the United States right now, in fact. It's perception. I got to stress, wrapping up the answer to that, it's the perception that is the power, right? Not the reality of a thing. It's the perception of a thing. That's where you get all the power from. Okay. Xenu, can hate be an emotional need and thus be used to manipulate us? No, hate is not an emotional need. Hate is an expression of hostility and anger and fear wrapped up together, right? You can take these varying emotions and these are emotional reactions, fear and anger, are emotional reactions, right? They're temporary emotional states, you could say. They're places your body goes and then goes out of. So emotional needs are longer term. These are more of the categories of things that we strive for over a lifetime. And hate is not something that anybody strives for over a lifetime. Hate is a reaction, not a goal or a need. There's no bucket of hate that people need to fill, right? Emotional needs are the things that are driving our behavior and our responses, because we get frustrated in the moment or we get upset or whatever reaction we have when a need is not being fulfilled or a need is being threatened. So you will feel anger and fear and other strong emotions toward a person or thing that is threatening one of your emotional needs. If you felt that very, very strongly that one of your emotional needs that you were working hard on in your life was to save the world, right? I'm going to be in Scientology. I'm going to save the world. I'm going to save the world. I'm going to save the world. I'm manifesting through my actions and through my work my need to have a purpose and meaning for my life. This fulfills me. This makes me feel like I'm doing what I need to be or should be doing. That's the kind of track we're on when we're fulfilling our emotional needs, is it feels right to us because we're on the right track for ourselves, right? So I'm establishing purpose and meaning for myself by pursuing this goal with these other Scientologists here, and we're all going to save the world, right? We're going to clear the planet. Here we go. And now L. Ron Hubbard or David Miscavige or somebody else stands on a stage at a Scientology event and tells me, well, we're all working our asses off here on Target Earth, and we're going to save this place. We're going to clear this planet. But you know who doesn't want to clear the planet? The psychs, the psychiatrists. They hate us and they hate people and they have evil intentions to destroy anyone who ever tries to do better. Those psychs are anti-life. They're just so wrapped up in the evil of their postulates, of their evil intentions, that they can't, that they just become the enemy, and they're trying to stop us because they're awful people, and that's the enemy, right? And now as a Scientologist, fulfilling my emotional needs, feeling I'm saving the world and Scientology is the vehicle that's going to do it, and the psychs are in my way, and they're stopping us, and they're drugging kids, and they're drugging all these people, and they're doing all this horrible stuff. I hate those people. I hate them. The psychs. Right? And now we have the whole thing. I mean, this is all pretty simple stuff, right? I know I'm being kind of whatever, but you see how this all works, right? The hate is not the emotional need. The hate is the reaction or response to trying to fulfill the emotional need and not being allowed to or being stopped from doing so, right? I just wanted to lay all that out super simply and clearly, so I hope that communicates well. How hate is certainly a manipulation technique. Oh, it's one of the best. Right? You get one group of people hating another group of people. Oh man, you own those folks, right? So it's a wonderful way to manipulate people, but it's not an emotional need. You instead use hate by creating hate, by leveraging it against an emotional need that you can create some threat or, some kind of anxiety about, and that's where the hate comes from. Okay. Great question. I'm really glad. And please throw more questions my way. I'm keen to answer any questions about any aspect of my REM model and clarify that stuff for you guys, because I really want you all to understand it. George Smiley, at the beginning of the Ideal Org program, I recall a video that hyped new orgs as safe places for Scientologists where they can hang out, take friends to the cafe, etc. Does this happen now? Of course not. No. Ideal orgs are empty. And Miscavige might have actually validly had the idea that he was creating these safe places. But people don't take other people to ideal orgs to just hang out because they can't. Why? Because the staff won't let them. Right? And even if the staff do sort of let them for a little while, there's always this sort of expectation and weird feeling in the air when you're in a Church of Scientology. It's not a place you can just go chill. It doesn't have that vibe. And I know that's just kind of, one of these like, well, it's in the air kind of answers that doesn't really, okay, but it's true. They are. You can't walk into a church of Scientology and just hang out. Somebody's going to come around and start talking to you and maybe start regging you. And they probably are going to start regging you because they're going to want something from you. They always want something from you. That's the problem with walking into a Church of Scientology, is they always want something from you. Mark. Cool. Hey, I hope you got my email back. I wanted to connect up with you, Mark. So, cool. So, email away. All right. So, yeah, no, George, they don't, no. There might be, your random outlier efforts here and there, but it's very, very clear that Scientologists do not take non-Scientologists down to the church to just hang out, chill, go to the cafe, something like that. I don't think it even occurs to them to do that. I've not seen or heard anything like that in any of these orgs right now. They should be, if they were following Hubbard policy, they would be, but they do not, and they are not. Okay. Is there another logical fallacy card and a critical thing you get called fucking lying? No. Okay, cool, Mark. Yeah, we'll talk soon. All right, cool, man. Alex. Yeah, what are you here for? Exactly. Hey, Alex, good to see you on board. Hope your live stream went well earlier today. It was cool. I'm really following your protest stuff closely, and I hope folks, by the way, on the Straight Up and Vertical show yesterday, I included a link to Alex's iesprotest.com website. So I hope you guys will check that out and be part of the whole protest thing over there. I wish I could go over there this year, but it's not really in the cards for me this time around. Maybe next year. Anyway, as far as the logical fallacy card, let me just say that obviously logical fallacies are, it's a funny comment. Yeah, I'll just move on. This is why I can't be a comedian, because I actually can't be funny in the moment. I just think of funny things every now and again to say, but most of the time I'm just kind of a dork. Sam Slade. Hey, Sam. Good afternoon. Right back at you. 1, do Sea Org members from wealthy donor families get better treatment? No. 2, do you think that sunken cost fallacy affects long-term elderly Sea Org members? Yes, I do. Okay, let's talk about these. First off, I just got your email, Mark. I did not observe. I observed a few times in PAC kids of wealthy Scientologists, and I'm not going to name names because it doesn't matter. I observed kids of wealthy Scientologists in the Sea Org who did well, and I observed kids of wealthy Scientologists who did not do well. The full spectrum. They are just as regular people as anybody else, same statistical distribution of, folks who are going to do well versus folks who are not going to do well under coercive treatment, that kind of thing, right? Not that anybody does well under coercive treatment, but you know what I mean. Yeah. So as far as getting better treatment, no. I've not seen or heard of that. And here's why, is because if somebody joins the Sea Org, they are owned by the Sea Org. And that's something that is pretty understood within the world of Scientology. There's no one who has the idea that the Sea Org is easy or should be a dream job, or is a lifestyle of comfort, or that you will join the Sea Org and you will have a smooth ride and everything is going to be just, fine for you. And there's never going to be any bumps or hiccups or problems, or you're not going to be challenged a lot in very challenging ways, right? Like everybody knows this about the Sea Org is what I'm trying to say. The wealthy guys know this. They recognize that the Sea Org is a place of sacrifice and sometimes I don't know that the word brutal totally fits. I don't think they would think of it that way, but tough, rigorous, demanding, challenging, all of those would be words that would very easily fit for how Scientologists, even wealthy ones, think about the Sea Org. So when you give up a kid, to the Sea Org, when you have one of your children go into the Sea Org, you think of it as, at best, you would think of it as your kid going into special forces or something, right? Like some elite military thing, like something that is going to be rough, tough, and hard. And if they come back crying about it or upset about it, it's kind of on them, because that's what the Sea Org is. And that's what the Sea Org needs to be as far as these high-level Scientologists are concerned, right? They think it's necessary and important that the Sea Org be the way that it is, rough, tough, and hard, because that's how you get things done. And there is a certain degree of truth to that in the world at large, that if you don't bring a tough attitude to a tough situation, you're probably not going to get the result you're looking for, because it's tough, right? So people who join the Sea Org are expected to rise to that level and make it go right. That's the ultimate test of a Scientologist and a Sea Org member, according to L. Ron Hubbard. It's right in the writings. Make it go right. And so the idea that you're going to get favored or specialist or better treatment because of your family name kind of runs exactly counter to that attitude of the Sea Org. The Sea Org is not a place where nepotism thrives. There may be opportunities that could open up for somebody because of their family name or because of the amount of money that their family has given to Scientology. That could be a factor here and there in certain decision making, but it would be a little arbitrary. It'd be a little bit up in the air. I couldn't predict where exactly that effect could occur, but most of the time, to be honest with you, people in the Sea Org are going to take pride in giving somebody with a family name that's a recognizable family name. They're going to take some pride in giving that person a harder time than they're going to try to give them a softer time, right? If anything, they'll get harder treatment. In general. Do you think the sunken cost fallacy affects long-term elderly Sea Org members? Yeah, of course it does. Absolutely. That would be a primary fallacy as to why they would stay in. But it's not conscious level stuff, you understand. I mean, this is sort of the stuff that it's deep. It's deep. These kind of sunk cost fallacy is not the sort of thing where a person is sitting there as a 75-year-old Sea Org member. Yes, this internal conversation absolutely could happen and probably has happened many times, but I'm thinking that in general, the bigger picture is that this inner monologue isn't happening, and that is imagining an elderly Sea Org member at a table or something like, well, you know, I really don't want to be here, and this place really sucks, and I really don't like it, but I've spent so much time here and I've spent so much money and I guess I should keep going. Like, it's not like that at all. That's not the way the conversation happens, right? It's more, God, you know, it's more like, I'm just going to keep plugging away and eventually I'm going to make it. You know, it's more of that kind of a dogged kind of grind, you know, sort of a Sisyphus kind of thing. It is kind of more how where the person's head would be at. At least that's been my experience of it in the Sea Org. Yeah. What's the witness, Vernon? Is Scientology growing in Mexico and South America? If so, is it because the people are not as educated about the cult compared to the US? I cannot sit here and tell you whether it's growing or shrinking in Mexico and South America right now. I don't know. I have no hard facts to fall back on one way or the other as to whether it's shrinking or growing in those regions. So I can't tell you. In a general sense, Scientology is shrinking around the world. That we do have many, many markers of, but I don't have specific markers from Mexico or South America that I can look to that I could say, oh yeah, it's shrinking or it's growing. I don't think it's growing there, but I dare not go over and say, oh, it's absolutely shrinking there, because I don't know. The reason it would be growing there, or that there would be growth there, would involve people not knowing as much about it as they do here. Sure, that could be a factor as to why people would get involved in Scientology in other countries. Our materials, the anti-Scientology materials and whatnot, have not all been translated. Although that in our modern world is becoming less and less and less of a problem because of, Google Translate and stuff. I mean, it's so no big deal to get things translated now that YouTube is automatically putting it into the video translation stuff, as you can get AI translations and stuff. I have no idea how good they are, but apparently they are not that bad. So if you want to close the door, you can. Yeah, Mel just came back from being out, so I got my office door open. So anyway, so lack of education about the cult is absolutely going to be a factor in countries outside the U.S. No question about it. But it won't be the only factor. The effectiveness of the recruitment methods that we talked about, ad nauseum, the emotional manipulation and whatnot, and the socioeconomic status of those countries is going to have everything to do with whether people are getting involved in Scientology or not. Because Scientology, remember, is a pay-to-play religion. So if you don't have money, you don't get to take part. And it just so happens that socioeconomically, the world is dividing very, very, very rapidly into the haves and the have-nots. And so the haves are the boutique religion aspect of Scientology I mentioned earlier in the show, right? The ultra wealthy have some attraction to Scientology, right? But if you don't have money, then it's awful hard to get involved for real. And that's a real barrier now for Scientology in a number of countries, including the United States. Okay, let's carry on here. You guys are asking me great questions today. I really liking today's show. All right, Miss Tara Green. Hey. Often I feel this overwhelming feeling of ecstasy or love towards everyone and everything. It's very enjoyable, but will I be scammed by cults? I might have something wrong in my brain like TLE. Any advice? Well, I'm certainly not going to throw TLE in your direction, Tara. That would be between you and a neurologist or your doctor. But I mean, very seriously, I mean that, right? Overwhelming feeling of ecstasy or love towards everyone or everything. Okay, I will share with you that I have certainly had my share of moments where I feel very closely connected with or very in tune with or in touch with other people. It's a great feeling, and it feels, it's very nice dopamine hit, and it's a wonderful place to be, to feel that degree of connection or relationship with the world or the universe or with other people and that kind of thing. It's a peak experience, and it's nice. If you're having them often, that's interesting, and perhaps something to talk about with a therapist or a doctor or whatever. I don't know that it's, a fully natural thing for us to often feel that degree of overwhelming ecstasy or love towards others. So maybe there's something interesting or unique going on there that you might want to speak with a therapist about if you feel troubled by it. But the thing about getting scammed by cults from those feelings is if you let the feelings override your rational layer, right? If you let those feelings dictate your behavior or dictate your decision making, that's where you'll run into trouble. Feelings are wonderful and they feel great. Sometimes they feel so good, right? And they can even get over into awe, love, connection, relation. Oh, those are some of the best feelings because it feels so collective, right? It feels like it's more than just you. It's bigger than you. Oh, wonderful stuff. I love feeling that way, but I don't ever let myself make decisions from that place. I always give myself time, especially if I'm overwhelmed by my feelings. And that is how you will get scammed by a cult, is if you don't give yourself that buffer. Right? Making decisions in an emotional place is sometimes necessary and sometimes unavoidable, but most of the time it's not necessary and it is avoidable. And you can give yourself some time to change your emotional state before you make some decision that's going to be, long-term important for you. So the advice I have for you is not necessarily that your feelings of love towards people are wrong. I don't know, and I'm not sure what you mean when you say often or overwhelming. Those are two very important words in that question you asked me. But the scammy part will only come if you let those emotions override your rational thinking. Right? And that's the discipline that I'm always calling for when I talk about critical thinking, is not allowing your thinking, your frontal lobes, to get overwhelmed by the feelings. And if you feel like that's happening, step back, step way back, right? And give yourself time to let those feelings go, as I've said. So that's the simplest, most direct advice. Longer term, again, this might be the kind of thing you want to talk to a therapist about. I'm not implying in saying that I think there's something wrong with you, by the way, Tara. I'm saying I don't know if there's something wrong with you. And that's why talking to a professional about it would be the way to go, right? But I do know that whether there's something wrong or not, what I'm saying about giving yourself time to get out of that headspace before making any decisions is how you avoid the cult stuff. Okay, good. Enough said. Mr. Rogers syndrome. That's interesting. Okay. The entire country of Luxembourg. Hey. I love being asked questions by an entire country. Did you know that 40% of US Americans also don't know that potato is a vegetable? Fuck, really? As Michael Jackson used to say, you're not alone. Please improve the USA educational system. Yeah, I'll own it. I hear you. I get it. Yep, I agree. I'll get onto that on my I was about to say on my battle plan. I'll add that to my to-do list today. Handle U.S. educational system. I'm on it. Xion, why didn't the 60s hippie peace movement stick? Could make it happen now. The reason it didn't stick is because, you know, I did know that, Alex. I did know that 72% of statistics are made up on the spot. I'm glad you knew that too. Actually, I think it's 73%. Anyway, okay, hippie movements. Why did it move? Why did it move on? It did stick. Okay, here's the thing about movements. I'll say this really fast and then I'll move on from this question about movements. As the way I see it, at least, social movements are not so much about creating brand new things out of whole cloth that don't exist in any way, as they are raising up or putting a spotlight, a lot of attention on a niche or minority group within the big picture society or culture for a period of time. The spotlight moves around. It's novelty, new. The society is constantly, especially an information consumptionist society like we have. I can't speak to Rome or Greece or the Middle Ages or some shit, right? But I can say that in modern times, the way information is distributed and the way that we consume information, the spotlight of interest moves around in the culture and focuses for periods of time on groups of people and highlights them. And so you get this rise and fall of interest in different parts of our society or different subcultures for periods of time as people are alternately fascinated and then disgusted or rejecting these things. They become novel and interesting and new, and oh, I can find pieces of me in that, or I reject parts of that because it counters parts of me, right? And people go into it or come out of it, go into it or come out of it. And this is the sort of the pendulum swing of the attention of our culture. Goes over here, and then it goes over here, and it goes over here, and it goes over here, right? And like wokeism, right? Wokeism is a concept that's been around, according to Wikipedia, for over 100 years. Or about 100 years now, right? But it changes. You know, what the specifics of where it's popular, how it's popular, who's talking about it, how they're talking about it, that changes over time. But the spotlight goes on to it and then moves off of it and then maybe comes back around. And guaranteed, at some point in a future, there will be another hippie movement. Right? But it's always there. It never really goes away. It's not like there's not a group of people who want peace and wear their hair long and are kind of counterculture or do different, you know, things that we could talk about from that hippie peace movement. They're always around. They were around before it. They were around after it. But the spotlight of attention on it is what changes, and therefore the amount of attention on it, the amount of interest in it, and the number of people getting on board with it or openly discussing it is what changes. You see what I mean? It still sticks. These values and ideas are always around in the same way that racism and bigotry are always around. It's just, are people talking about it? Is it popular? Is it something that has the spotlight right now? You know, that's kind of how we see these things, and our perception of it is sometimes wrong, because if it goes out of our, you know, if the spotlight moves on and we're only watching the spotlight, we might think, oh, well, it vanished, it disappeared, it's not around anymore. No, it's still around. Yeah, that's right. A lot of the old No Kings attendees are old hippies. That's exactly right. All right. X-Cyan, have you watched any more South Park episodes from the new season? Just episodes 1 and 2. But that's all we watched. I moved on. Good stuff. And I loved watching them. You know, of course, trash Trump. That was a lot of fun. Okay, I believe that this will be... Nope, okay. Yes, I think this is going to be the last of the questions for this week. We got a few more in this week. It was fun. And if you have more, go ahead and throw them in now, because we'll probably be... otherwise, we'll be wrapping up pretty soon. George Smiley, what is the cultiest song that Scientology has produced? Ooh. Oh. Cultiest. Let's see. The cultiest. Oh, I'll tell you. You guys probably don't know about this. Because it came and went so fast. There was a whole opera, an entire album, a whole CD put together, putting to music, Hymn of Asia. And it's culty as hell, right? Hymn of Asia, CD album. Here we go. I'm looking it up right now. I can find it on Amazon. It doesn't say. It says copyright L. Ron Hubbard Library, but it doesn't give a year. Originally published in 1970. The book was originally published in 1974 by the Church of Scientology. It says here. L. Ron Hubbard wrote the Hymn of Asia for a Buddhist convention during the 1955-1956 worldwide celebrations of the 2500th year of the Buddhist era. I don't know if that's true or not, but that is a note from the album itself. Let's see, number of Scientologists worked on it. And this was the musical version in operatic form of Hymn of Asia, Amai Matea, right? And it takes all the, because it's a pretty thick book, and they turned it into that. Now, We Stand Tall, starring the shortest man on earth, David Miscavige, is absolutely satire fodder on this channel, no question about it. But I don't think We Stand Tall is quite as culty as Hymn of Asia is. And that's why I threw that out at you, right? You got to hear it to believe it. We watched the entire thing. We were given a live show of it in PAC. And so I've heard the entire album beginning to end live. You know, Amai Matea. Yeah, I don't sing well. And I probably am gonna butcher it if I try to sing more, but yeah, it's Amai Matea. It's like that over and over and over again. And then he sings about the lessons and how he's bringing you these lessons, and how, you know, if only the people will learn the lessons, then they will see that he is back and that hope is alive again, and Buddha is returning, and we will have, peace on earth and all of this. I think this is kind of along the messaging of what Hymn of Asia was all about. It's Awful. Awful stuff. All built on a complete and utter lie. And that Scientology would now just as soon forget, which is why I think it makes it the cultiest song, because it's fun when it's so culty that even the cult can't continue doing it, right? And that's kind of where Hymn of Asia has landed. I mean, they have no credibility in the Buddhist world now. Scientology does not have any credibility in that world. And Hymn of Asia was part of the reason why. Back in the 90s, they really went to town trying to convince that the Buddhist world that L. Ron Hubbard and this prophecy were something. And it was only some Buddhist, fringe elements who went to Flag to check it out or something. Something happened with that whole thing, and it went down really badly. And the possibility now of Scientology and the Buddhists connecting is about as realistic as Scientology and the Native Americans connecting. You know what I mean? Like Scientology's lies in that area, Hubbard's lies in that area, have caught up with them so hard that there's really not much chance that they're ever going to be able to resuscitate that relationship. They tried to, live large on Hubbard's relationship with the Blackfeet Indians, and he was a youngest, blood brother or whatever. It was all bullshit. It was just no truth connected with that at all. Same thing with Hymn of Asia. There's just no truth with Hubbard's bullshit of the prophecy of Maitreya and him being the living prophecy of a reenactment of a reincarnation of Buddha or whatever. It was, no, they really don't. They don't at all. So anyway, that's the one I will throw out there as far as the cultiest stuff. And Matt, hey Matt, you got a question for me? Let's see what we got. You said that the issue of archetypes was one of the few subjects that Jordan Peterson had commented intelligently on. What did Jordan Peterson say about that, and why did you find it interesting? Oh, great. Thanks for asking me this. As I understand it, Jordan Peterson has a whole class or a whole lecture in one of his classes about the topic of Jungian archetypes and how they manifest in myth and lore and legend and storytelling. And so the narratives of cultures over time reflect these archetypes. And this is where Jung was drawing these archetypes from, was these mythical, cultural myths that are personified, or we can sort of center them around these archetypes. And I found that to be an interesting observation, right? The idea that psychology was a mirror of cultural myths, and those cultural myths were a mirror of the different personality archetypes that exist. And I thought, okay, I can understand that as a concept. That makes sense to me. And it wasn't something that I had particularly thought about or connected dots with before that, right? I hadn't really thought about storytelling reflecting cultural values that reflect psychological truths about people, right? I just never really thought about it much. And so Peterson was somebody who turned my attention to that as a concept, and I thought, that's interesting. I don't know that it's actually true, in that I don't know that all cultures would reflect those archetypes accurately, or, are we having to fit a round peg in a square hole in some cases? But it's an interesting idea, right? And Peterson's lectures on that I found to be, that's thought-provoking. Again, I don't know that it's a true thing, in that it would always fall into place that way. I don't think the world lines up around simple principles that way, really. But I do think that it provoked thinking, right? Because it got me thinking about universal personality types or universal truths when it comes to how people organize themselves, or how we think about our values and how we personify our values. This is, the Greek gods, the Roman gods. I mean, are they not personifications of various values and characteristics of people and how we think about people, right? And So breaking it down that way was like, oh yeah, okay. You know, just, oh yeah, it's a way of thinking that I hadn't considered before. That lets me look at storytelling a little differently. Like, oh right, stories have a cultural function to them. There's an indoctrination function, but there's also a let's see, because it's not all just indoctrination. You don't want to reduce an entire culture down to the methods by which it reproduces itself and say cynically, oh, it all just comes down to that, right? It's all just indoctrination. Because I don't think it is. It's indoctrination is all in the direction, cultural indoctrination is all in the direction of, you know, sort of greasing the wheels of how the culture operates, right? It's trying to establish cultural norms or identity and fundamental principles on which we can all agree, and by agreeing, we can all get along better, right? Like, let's not murder each other. So let's imbue our cultural heroes and the norms by which we talk about stories. Let's imbue that with this concept that, you know, murdering somebody is probably not a good idea. Well, is that indoctrination? Yes. Is it bad indoctrination? No. Do we use narratives and heroics and storytelling and inspirational stories or motivational, emotionally manipulative storytelling to imbue these principles in kids? Yes, we do. Does every culture do that? Yes, they do. Is that a bad thing? No, but sometimes if I disagree with those principles, then it's wrong, right? I mean, anyway. I don't mean to ramble too much here, but this is kind of where my thinking goes when I started thinking about all this stuff. It was like, oh, right. This is how we transmit information from generation to generation and perpetuate ideas over time. And through that, we create and mold civilizations that build up around, you know, is it going to build up around the Code of Hammurabi? Is it going to build up around the Ten Commandments? Is it going to build up around the Bill of Rights? What is the central core ideas around which this culture builds? Well, look to the storytelling that the culture engages in and look at the archetypes of the stories, right? Look at the characters and the values and the principles that are being communicated in those stories, and you'll see an awful lot. You'll realize an awful lot about why that culture is the way that it is, because of the stories that it propagates and the archetypes that it leans into, right? That was one of the sort of, you know, ideas I had as a result of Peterson bringing this entire topic up. And I thought that was pretty thought-provoking, pretty good stuff, right? Again, I don't know that I agree with his conclusions about it, because I don't know right now as I sit here what all of his conclusions were about it, but I do know that the concept of it was, as you can tell here as I'm sitting here going on and on about this, it was quite thought-provoking for me. Okay. Good. All right. And that looks like our final question for today. So coming up on time to wrap up. Anyway, thanks very much, guys, for coming around and listening to me babble on at a mad rate about all of this. I am, I'll just reiterate again as we're rolling through October here that it looks like I will be continuing through November, and then I'll probably be taking December off for my usual sort of break time to get away from it all and focusing on myself for a little while and maybe get some work done too. I'll probably be doing that during December when I'm going to be trying to get my second book out. And otherwise, we will carry on with the usual content on the show here. So tell your friends and family about how awesome all the answers I have for you are here, and encourage them to watch my show, my channel, my work, and purchase my book about Scientology, and look forward to the next book that's coming soon. All right, guys, thanks for coming around. I'll see you guys soon. Bye-bye.